What's up guys, I'll be doing a case study video on Argonaut resources, stock ticker ARE. I'll be looking at this 2017 move here that was a 5-bagger and I'll be telling you the story behind it. This is the first time that I ever really sat down and said I'm gonna trade a story. So I remember ARE quite fondly for this reason. It's the first time I ever traded a story for just being a story. I abandoned fundamentals, I abandoned technicals to some extent, and I just said, I'm going to trade this for what it is, a hype garbage stock. Now, I traded in the previous years and I was quite relatively new. I was perhaps 1.5 to 2 years into the spec space at this point in time. I traded things like IoT, I'd buy in at 6 cents, I'd watch it all the way to 18. And I remember on this day, my mum called me and she asked me how my trading was going. And I remember being so proud that I made $30,000 profit in 2 weeks, just under 2 weeks. But I didn't tell her it was unrecognized profit, and I ended up selling at around 10 cents. So I left a lot of profits out there that I could have taken. And same thing with XPE, I'd buy in here at around 6 cents and sell at 8, when I left a lot of profit on the table. And same thing with this move up here. I decided to hold this one because XPE was just, it was too good of a story, the story with Intel and all that sort of stuff that was going on at the time. The IT sector was booming in 2015, 2016, so I guess a lot of us got trapped in the story at the time. So this is where I decided that really storytelling was going to be something I was going to try out. Now when I say storytelling, I don't mean the story that I tell, but rather the story that I interpret when I read company announcements. So first things first, we're going to look at the Appendix 3B. They've got 1.1 billion shares at the time, which converts to 9 million market cap at 0.008 share price. So having a look at the 4C quarterly that was available at the time, they spent next to nothing on exploration and evaluation. They had 140k staff costs, 92k in admin and corporate costs. So overall, they weren't really doing anything for the quarter. We scroll down, we can see how much cash in the bank they had, 60k in the bank basically, so really there's no money there. And if we scroll down, we can see that they plan on spending 600k for the next quarter, which was super interesting. So they had planned to spend 335k in the following quarter. So of course, if they have 600k that they plan to spend, and if they plan to spend 300k for this quarter, but they only have 60k in the bank, there's obviously money issues. Now, most people would be concerned about that financial situation. There's simply not enough money and cap raising will have to come. So the interesting thing about cap raising is when your stock price is at the lows, there is no way in hell you're going to convince investors to put money into your stock in order for them to profit. They're just not going to see it as a good opportunity. So when a stock is at the low like this, cap raising isn't as big of a deal as when the stock price is already moving up. When the stock price is moving up, that's when you're going to get capital raising. So these guys need money, so that they need to tell a convincing story in order for the share price to move up and investors to invest. So let's have a look at the story that they decided to tell. This is the quarterly report that came out at the same time as that financial document. And if we scroll down, a lot of that was quite uninteresting until we got to Torrens in South Australia. Argonaut had a 30% holding and its joint venture partner had 70%, and the joint venture partner was Aeris Resource Limited. Now, these guys had been doing nothing for basically 9 years, right? At 2008, they'd been looking at drilling into Torrens, but they couldn't because they had issues with the native title. So I didn't go through the entire history of this, but this was a key component, was the native title. So the joint venture seemed like it wasn't going anywhere, but at the same time, this was really interesting. There was an anomaly in the gravity, and they called it larger than Olympic Dam. Now, Olympic Dam, for those who don't know, is a BHP piece of land. Now, Olympic Dam is a flagship project of BHP, and if you're unaware, BHP is worth tens of billions of dollars. So it's a huge-ass company, and just to give you an idea of Olympic Dam's size, their mine for Olympic Dam has 450 kilometers of underground roads and tunnels. And they're extracting IOCG, which is iron oxide copper gold. And it's one of the world's largest deposits. So how do we know that ARE actually has an Olympic Dam-sized IOCG deposit if they can't drill in the ground because of a native title? Well, they discovered that they have a gravity anomaly. Now, a gravity anomaly is where typically a plane will fly over at very low height, and there'll be a machine attached, and it'll basically measure the difference between Earth's gravity at the surface and the gravity below the surface, and it'll determine if there are heavier objects and metals underneath. It's a bit more complex than that, but that's just basically a summary of how it works. And what you end up with is a map like this that's generated. So you can see the density of the gravity and the pull that it has. So this would indicate that there's actually something in the ground that's heavy. In other words, an iron ore, copper, or gold. However, historically, if there's one thing I've learned about gravity anomalies, is that they literally mean nothing. They actually mean nothing. I don't think I've ever seen a gravity anomaly turn into anything significant ever. But it seems to be a story that's told repetitively in the junior explorer space. So what we have here is a gravity anomaly by ARE, and this is the size of the Olympic Dam deposit. So you can see that ARE actually has 3 times the size of Olympic Dam, supposedly, according to this investor presentation. I have no doubt that you can see what kind of story is being told here right now. You've got a share price of 0.08, a market cap of $10 million, and you've got a company that's claiming to have a gravity anomaly that looks to be 3 times the size of Olympic Dam. And Olympic Dam being one of the world's largest IOCG deposits, and BHP's worth tens of billions of dollars. So that story there should be super obvious to anyone. You've got a 10 million market cap stock that can potentially become billions and billions and billions of dollars. Of course, if they pass their native title, and of course if they do drilling and it shows results, but one has to of course factor in that risk that those things won't happen. But you've got a 10 million market cap stock, and you've got this sitting in front of you. I'm sure you can see the story that's being told. My train of thought here was, I'm still going to just trade the story. No matter how tempting this story was, it was just a story. Consider it a fairy tale, if you will. Not real, but interesting to listen to. So if we scroll out, we can see that it's tanked multiple times. I don't know the real history behind these moves, and it doesn't really bother me, because all I know is that they've been trying to get this Olympic Dam-sized deposit going since 2008. And it's failed. If it's failed 9 years in a row, in my mind, it's going to fail for a 10th year in a row. Now, thankfully, they got their native title. However, the native title came a little bit late. So let's have a look at what happens between here in start of September to the mid of November. If we look at the announcements, we can see that really there was just a Torrens investor presentation. There was some drilling to happen at Higgins Gold, which was a lot less significant than the IOCG deposit. And if we keep looking, we can see there's an annual report to shareholders, and then of course there's another investor presentation to drive the story. But really, there's nothing happening right up until Torrens operational approval being granted. So this is where they were given the rights to do the aerial survey, the gravity survey, and the diamond drilling at Lake Torrens. So this is at the 28th. The 28th of November, let's have a look at that. So between here at almost 3 cents all the way down to 0.08, it was nothing but just the story. The story drove it the entire way. It's quite interesting because the story really was pushed by the forums. If we look at everything between September, October, and November, look at all these threads that are being started. More than half of these are users on the forum posting usually just nonsense. Here's an example of one of them. This is the gravity anomaly that was posted. I think it was a historical old gravity anomaly that was taken. So this is the Olympic dam sized one down here from the previous chart. And of course there's two major ones here. But it's interesting because these people talk a bunch of nonsense as well. They mentioned that geomagnetic survey maps never lie. Well, yeah, they don't lie in terms that that's actually the results of the gravity readings. But geomagnetic maps are not a guarantee of anything. And this is probably the biggest takeaway you should ever take from a mining junior, is that these magnetic maps mean absolutely nothing. The thing that people imply is that there's absolutely something in the ground, and in this case, geomagnetic maps never lie, is implying that there is iron ore, copper, and gold in the ground. And it's just not the case. It's not a guarantee. It's just a story that people tell themselves because they want to believe that this is going to be a life changer. So this is the technical analysis that I used to trade the story. It really was not that sophisticated. It was quite simple, and honestly, in hindsight, it was a bit of dumb luck. The only good target here was this horizontal at 2.8, but here I was thinking I was trading like a pro, and I'd partial sell here at 2.6, try at 2.8, panicked and sold at 2.7, and rebought at 2.4, and then resold again at 2.8, and just kind of left everything else above it. It was a bit of dumb luck because there's just no historical information that I could use. There's no horizontals here that were reliable or useful. And there were no trend lines that I could use. It was just, I guess, a bit of dumb luck that I ended up making such a successful trade. In the end, I don't really remember what happened afterwards. I stopped looking at the story because I already made my profits on the story. I abandoned it and I just didn't care what happened. From memory, I do recall an announcement coming from ARE accusing AIS of something. I can't remember what it was. And it just caused a rift between the two companies. And I think this happened here at May, June in 2019. All I remember is that it was a highly, highly unprofessional document. It was just really a childish tantrum, and it was released to the public, and it was just really embarrassing to see. So if you want to see something interesting, you might want to read that document there. Otherwise, this is the story that I traded, and this should serve as a reminder to everyone that you should really trade the story. Do not believe in any hype. Do not believe in any multi-bagger, billion-dollar stock potential because it just will never happen.